Thank you very much for joining today. Thank you for the introduction, but as a little bit of an icebreaker, I'm going to go through and just explain a little bit about who I am, where I come from, and how I got here. So I am based in sometimes sunny, sometimes rainy, sometimes neither, London. Originally from South Africa. I've been at GitLab for uh, going on 3.5 years now. But I say to people, I've only been paid by GitLab for that time. I've been a contributor for much longer than that. I started my GitLab journey many years before that, actually contributing to GitLab. And in fact, that was part of my open source journey, which I'll talk about a little bit in a moment. Um, what I am at GitLab, my team used to be called Contributor Success. We're now called DevRel Engineering. Basically, we look after incoming contributions to our open source project. And as inner source is all about figuring out how to take open source practices and use them inside your world. In my previous organization, I was very much involved with the inner source side of things, so I figured it was a good opportunity to feed some of the um, inner source, or some of the open source lessons back into the inner source community. Um, you may have seen this website before if you done anything with the inner source commons, but just to establish who I am, that was me all the way back in 2018. So I have been around with the inner source commons for some time. Uh, I left, not really left. You never really leave, do you? But I sort of went away a little bit to learn a lot more around open source and practice open source. And yeah, now I'm trying to bring, as I said, some of that back into the inner source space. Um, and really, that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this session is just close that loop. So I started um, doing inner source and trying to teach and spread an inner source culture through the organization I was with at the time, and that led me very quickly into the world of open source. And I moved from just sort of being aware of open source and using open source to actively starting to contribute into open source, one of those projects being GitLab. Um, and that moved me into the um, when I joined GitLab and into the team that is actively around building that contribution community out. And um, from very much from an engineering point of view. So we look at making our tooling easier to adopt for contributors, and pretty much anything that we can do to ease that burden of getting started with contributing. And I believe many of the things that we do can almost certainly be applied internally whenever you're trying to build or grow a inner source program internally. Uh, now, to to kick this off, I just want to take you through a little story. The story is called "The Tragedy of the Commons." You may have heard it or something similar in the past. Um, and picture, if you will, a medieval village once upon a time. Uh, of the many economic activities that can take in this town, one of the most important things is raising sheep. Many of the town's families have plenty of sheep, and they support themselves by selling the sheep's wool, which is then used to make clothing, etc. At the beginning, as our story begins, the sheep spend much of their time eating the grass in that surrounds the town. This is called the town commons. No one family owns that land. Instead, it's all communally owned by the town residents, and everyone's allowed to eat their sheep, to let their sheep graze. And this group ownership works well because land is plentiful and there's enough for everyone. And as long as everyone's getting all the good grass they want, the town commons is an awesome place, and allowing people's residents sheep to eat for free causes no problems, and everyone's happy. Um, as the years pass, the population grows and becomes the victim of its own success. And so does the number of sheep eating the grass on the town commons, with a growing number of sheep and a fixed amount of land. the land starts to lose its ability to regrow and starts becoming depleted. And one could say there's too many takers in this scenario. Um, and with nothing left in the town commons, raising sheep becomes a lot more difficult, and the wool industry collapses, and tragically, many families lose their source of income and have to find it alternatives. So, you know, why is this? Why did this happen? Who allowed it to happen? Well, that's just it. No one really allowed it to happen, and this actually arises out of an external factor. When one family's group of sheep eats the grass, it reduces the quality of land available for other families. And because no one was actually keeping track of things in the the bigger picture, it was difficult to foresee the problem coming through. Now, this kind of brings us back to the lesson, and that's what's common to many is one of those things that's least taken care of, because yeah, you have a great regard for the thing that you have rather than what you possess in common with others. Um, and yeah, there's ways to reduce that. Of course, there is. But yeah, sometimes you can look at taking that common resource and actually taking some ownership of it. Now, if the town commons didn't exist, those farmers would have had to have spent 3.5 times the amount of money they spent looking after their flock, actually maintaining and creating their own grasslands. But we're talking about software in a source, open source here. Why, what does this have to do with anything? Well, the town commons is open source. Um, and potentially even within your organization, it's that project that all of the other projects are using, but no one's really like necessarily paying too much attention to and maintaining. And that same number comes out of that's where this number comes from. That 3.5 times the amount of money firms would have to spend if they had to maintain and create software from scratch if they didn't use open source software. So let's understand for a moment why people contribute. Of course, we talk about, uh, oh, you should contribute, but understanding the why behind things often gives us a much better understanding of how we can attract more contributors to our project. And again, when I talk about our project, I'm going to talk interchangeably between open source projects and inner source projects because, again, there are many features that are interchangeable between the two. Um, so typically, you have a number of extrinsic and intrinsic motivators. Extrinsic motivators comes from outside, intrinsic is from within. Often what will happen is you get someone to you get someone in with a little bit of extrinsic motivation, whether that's money, grades, praise, swag, all of these kinds of things will help bring someone through the door. The trick then is how do you convert that person that you've brought into your project from somebody who's come in for the extrinsic rewards, and how do you start feeding them with some intrinsic rewards? Because these are the things that'll make them stay. You may have heard the sort of phrase, we came for the code, we stayed for the community, or something along the lines of that. That's pretty much what you want to do here. So you really need to find a way of giving somebody that intrinsic motivation, because that's the sort of thing that will actually keep someone around for a longer period of time. Because at least in our open source projects, we often see you'll always see a number of different types of contributors, and these can be almost sort of split down into some level of funnel, where you've got a lot of new contributors coming in, but the ones that actually stay around for longer is significantly less, maybe even 10x. Uh, the ones that even sort of stay to move up in your meritocracy are even fewer. So yeah, it's all about how do you maximize the number of users getting through that funnel so that you keep good quality contributors around to grow your project and grow your community around your project. So, what are we already doing in our project that makes contributing easy? Uh, First of all, uh, understanding that contribution to any project is more than just code. We always start with code because that's generally what people think of when they think about open source or inner source. Yeah, you want to add a feature, you want to fix a bug, you want to do something, and of course, code is still very important. Um, but yeah, contribution comes in multiple forms. Uh, Code, whether it's backend, front end, or other types of code. Uh, Code review is a very good way of getting started with any project because that way you can start to see how other people are approaching solving problems, how the team that is reviewing that approaches reviews, and it gives you an idea as to the different things that you might need to cover if you were going to start contributing to that project. In fact, often if I look at an open source project and I'm about to go and make a contribution there, I will often pop open the open pull requests, merge requests, to have a look through the sorts of things that are going in right now, um, just to get an idea as to if I need to change my approach in any way, and if there's anything I need to do. Um, Documentation is often a sort of gateway for people to get involved. Often got a lower barrier of entry, so that's a great way to to get involved. Um, at GitLab, we have a public handbook, and in fact, that is itself open source, so anyone can actually contribute to that. And if that's a way for people to contribute to us. But if your team again had any sort of open uh, things like that, that would be other avenues for people to get involved with your team's work and your team's goals. Um, Additional to sort of your code side of things, other things. So looking at design, if you're building your project or you're building your library or whatever out in the open uh, for for other people to see, then potential users of that can get involved right at the beginning. They can get they can help you shape the ideas before you go and spend a large amount of time solving a problem that actually maybe doesn't exist, or the shape of the problem is slightly different to how you envisaged it. Um, and that's a great way to again bring people in and grow that level of engagement. Translations, in our case, our translations are all open source and anyone can come in and get started in that way. But again, if you've got these things internally, maybe you've got a large global organization and your organization has things in a couple of different languages and maybe just making things of more freely available, whether it's bits of your documentation or something, to people that are natively speaking another language. Your company probably has a single business language, but again, never underestimate the power of speaking to someone in their native language because that's a far deeper way to make that connection and to um, get that person on board and get that person aligned to whatever you're trying to do. So one of the things we started doing on our side is we built so in the previous one there was that link. We built a contributor platform, contributors.gitlab.com. This started as a POC that we ran internally with our team. But really what it is, it's evolved into it's a platform. It goes and scrapes all the active contributions that are coming in to our projects. And from that, uh, we go and start adding awards, rewards, and points, and effectively gamify the whole process. And then over the next couple of slides, I'll sort of talk a little bit about how we do that. But one of the first things that we did with that is when you sign up to the contributor platform, you get a personalized contributor journey. That contributor journey, as you can see, you get an issue created. That issue gives very specific links to some tutorials about how to get started contributing to our project, where office hours sessions. So we've got a community, we have a number of community pairing sessions that run every week. Maybe if you are looking to pick up a couple of contributors in your project, if you have these public sort of talks that run periodically, could be once a month, could be once a week, whatever cadence works for you. But that's a way for interested contributors or users can actually get involved and just even speak to the team that are working on it. Uh, Other things that we highlight in there is some links to some good first-time contributor issues or some other things if someone really is looking for that way to get started. So it's just that little bit of personal touch, just that little way to start giving the the extrinsic um, motivation to people, and also just start giving them the feels that this is somewhere that they belong. This is somewhere that they're welcome, and you want them as part of your project. Um, Another thing that is incredibly important is knowing your contributors and knowing who is actually contributing. Um, One of the things we did on our side is we ran a UX study to contribution. We actually did this twice. The first time we ran it, we had a dismal completion rate. As you can see on the slide there, it was less than 50%. So less than 50% of the people that we brought into our study completed the study and actually got through it. And it just all round wasn't a great thing. They didn't know where to get started. They didn't know how. Uh, as we had built a lot of this sort of onboarding that I'm talking about, and these guides and these breadcrumbs and these guardrails for people to join, we went back and ran the same study with a bunch of new participants, and these were first-time contributors coming to contribute to the project, and from doing it a year, 18 months before to doing it at the beginning of last year, we had a 100% success rate. And we got some really cool quotes out of those. And it's just important for us to know that where we were and where we are. And obviously, we probably run a similar thing again in the future to make sure that we are continually keeping that level of accessibility to the community. So in your organization, it might be handy to do that. Maybe you don't go as a full UX study with uh, a UX researcher or something. Maybe it's just as simple as surveying your existing contributor community, understanding what it is, why they're there, and what's keeping them coming back is a good way of making sure that you have the things that they want when they're coming back, or at least if there's ways that you can improve your project, give them an opportunity to let you know what they would need to keep coming back. Um, on that contributor platform we built, so we found ways to start gamifying the the development of things. So effectively, what the platform does is it runs some jobs fairly regularly and goes and looks at all of our contributions, whether that's merge requests, issues, translations, as I mentioned, and a number of them, and it starts allocating points to them. We've tied a pseudo value to all of these different contributions, and it allows somebody to, as they contribute and as they continue to contribute, they can start leveling up and growing within the community. Um, this leveling up allows us to have things like leaderboards and other rewards, and you know, everybody loves it when points mean prizes. Uh, Going back to one of those motivations, extrinsic motivations, so we allow people to actually earn the right to effectively buy swag um, through contribution. So the more they contribute, the more access they have to be able to redeem things. And these are, in many cases, these are unique swag items that even our own team members don't even have access to because they are purely driven for our contributor community. Um, and again, one of those things that's the extrinsic motivation brings people into the system and allows us to engage with them further and grow them and hopefully get them to the point where they're getting enough intrinsic motivation from the contribution process. What, one of the things we do also with that onboarding issue is we've focused very closely on how accessible our tooling is for our users. And I think this is one of the more critical points. And I remember contributing to GitLab before I even joined the team. And GitLab have a tool called the GDK, the GitLab Development Kit. And this was a big, scary thing. And I kind of didn't really run it, couldn't really run it on my machine because it was this big, scary thing and it broke, it didn't run properly on Windows and stuff. So we spent a lot of time focusing on making our tooling accessible, making our tooling usable to everyone. So we've taken our whole GDK, made it containerized, made it easy for people to adopt, and we're continually looking at ways to make it even easier to get to the point. So gone from on a supported machine, it will take you kind of 2 hours to install GDK if you're lucky. And if you're very lucky, it'll install and you won't get an error message and you're ready to go. We've changed that to being able to get you up and running in sort of less than 5 minutes with just starting up a container and you're sort of ready to go. So that time, also recognizing that somebody contributing to your project is doing so in their spare time. That time may be obviously in the open source world, that time's probably after hours or possibly after hours. If they're lucky, they can actually contribute during business hours too. And in a source, largely that's going to be in their spare time during business hours, most probably. If you've got people contributing in their personal time to your inner source project, that's great too. But there might be other conversations to be having with those people. Um, but really, what it is it's a respect of that person's time. So the less time they have to spend getting up to speed to use the same tools that you use to develop your project, the the faster they can get to a point where they can actually start doing the actual contribution work rather than the playing with tools. And we all know what it's like. If you trying to adopt something or pick something up, if it takes you 3 days and you don't feel like you're actually getting anywhere, you're just going to eventually abandon your ideals of making a contribution and move on and go find somewhere else. So it's definitely one of the important parts of what we do is making sure that that tooling, that is the same tooling that our team uses, that any contributor out there is actually able to use. And then the last aspect, which is one of the sort of more new aspects, which I think could be um, could be adopted in an inner source fashion. So we have a program called Co-Create, where we're actively looking for high value contributors. Now, what is a high value contributor? Well, a high value contributor is somebody who's actively using your tool, um, potential to continually contribute afterwards, um, and someone because they're already using it, they understand, they already have needs. So in the open source world, you get contributors who will come in and then they're looking for some open source credentials, and they'll look for to make some contributions, and they'll possibly move on if once their extrinsic needs are met, and they'll move on. But this is a way of us trying to capture the ones who are going to stick around and maybe just need that extra little bit of uh, a kickstart. And by that, what do I mean? Well, have you ever heard any of these phrases come out of a potential contributor? Well, I don't know where to start. I don't have time to learn your code base. Well, my team doesn't prioritize working on your code. Well, I don't want to maintain your code. Yeah, these are all sorts of things that excuses that people will um, come out with when they're thinking about contributing or trying to avoid contributing sometimes. And so how does co-create actually sort of solve that? Well, what if we could eliminate those barriers for you? What if the project team actually came to you and helped you make that first contribution? In our case, what that means is we set up some time with that customer who is potentially looking to start contributing, and we actually send them one of our engineers for a week, and they work on a feature together, and they have a very clear guide through the code base and through the entire contribution process, which helps them really recognize um, what it is that they're doing. And it's been really successful, and we've had some some really good results out of it. And what you get at the end of it is you get somebody who is able to contribute freely, potentially already growing in the community themselves by then starting to mentor other contributors. Um, but you also get somebody who's probably a little bit more loyal to your project, uh, whether that's um, something that you're using internally or it's an open source project. That's that's all good. So it's very much a win-win scenario at the end of it. What does that typically look like for us? In this case, we sort of do a little bit of work before that week's engagement. Then we have that on-site week where we actually sort of dig right into working with it, and then we give them the ability to build independent momentum at the end of it with ongoing support. And having a program like this within, if you're in a large organization, you've got a big project that you want to make an inner source project, or you're looking for extra contributors in that, maybe this is that extra push that someone needs. Maybe someone's using your project, wants to get started, but they just don't know how. And maybe looking at doing some sort of internal rotation where you could sort of sequester a team member to another team just for something as little as a week to really just spring boot those contributions would be a really good way to start. Uh, there's a couple of other things that we're sort of starting to plan now, and that's the ability to highlight mentorships within the community, and that's really just to be able to recognize that uh, as as a contributor, I can recognize another contributor to say that, hey, this person's really helped me grow my understanding of the platform and you know, grow my sense of belonging to this community, and I want to highlight them as a mentor. Um, and we're looking at using this to, again, share the empowerment of um, the ownership of the community out to the community themselves. Because as much as we're actively driving the community, we're here. This is our tool that we're building this community around. The community is much more than that. So we've got a couple of things up our sleeves. We're looking to implement, and yeah, maybe I come back in a year's time and give you an update with exactly how that's gone for us and some other patterns and some other processes that you could bring into your organization. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for having me. And yeah, time for any questions.